Hi there. Welcome to your next best step. I'm Coach Janet J. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood words in the Christian faith. And that misunderstanding is keeping many of us physically sick, emotionally stuck, and spiritually exhausted. Today, on Good Friday, I want to walk you through what forgiveness actually is and what it is not, and why the distinction changes everything about how you hold the weight of what someone did to you. Here is something most of us were never taught. Forgiveness and reconciliation are two completely separate processes. Forgiveness happens inside you. It is about what you carry. Reconciliation is a relational process that requires effort and safety from both people. You cannot do one without the other. And sometimes the wisest, most God-honoring choice is to forgive someone and still choose distance. This is part one of a two-part forgiveness series. So if this topic resonates, be sure you are subscribed so you do not miss what comes next on Wednesday. Today is Good Friday, and on this day, we remember the most staggering act of forgiveness in human history. Jesus, suffering on the cross, looked at the people who put him there and said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." He did not excuse what they did. He did not minimize the pain. He did not pretend it was acceptable. He named the wrong. They do not know what they are doing. And he released them anyway. That is the model. And it is the one Paul echoes in Ephesians 4:31-32. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Notice the order Paul lays out. First, get rid of the bitterness, the internal work of releasing what has been festering. Then, be kind and compassionate. That word kind is worth pausing on because kindness in this context is not about being nice or pleasant. The Greek word Paul uses, Christos, carries the idea of being useful, generous, good-hearted. It is an orientation of the heart, not a performance. You can be kind towards someone without being in a relationship with them. Kindness here is about who you are becoming, not about what the other person deserves. Then forgive. Paul understood that forgiveness is a process, and the process often starts with releasing what we have been gripping. So let me name 3 things forgiveness is not, because these myths keep people trapped. Myth 1, forgiveness means that what happened was okay. It does not. Forgiveness is not excusing. It is not minimizing. If someone violated your trust, harmed someone you love, or repeatedly crossed your boundaries, forgiveness does not erase that reality. It acknowledges the wrong and releases the emotional grip it has on you. Myth 2, forgiveness means you have to reconcile. This is the one that causes the most damage, especially in faith communities. Psychologist Everett Worthington, who has spent over 30 years researching forgiveness, makes this distinction clear. Forgiveness happens inside your own skin. Reconciliation happens between two people, and it requires both parties to show up with honesty, accountability, and a willingness to change. If only one person is doing the work, that is not reconciliation. That is re-entry into harm. Myth 3. Forgiveness is a one-time event. Research consistently shows that forgiveness is a process, not a moment. You may need to re-choose it, sometimes daily, especially when memories surface or when you encounter that person again. And every time you re-choose, that is faithfulness. That is strength. Here is where this moves from theology to physiology. When you replay a hurt, when you mentally rehearse the conversation, relive the betrayal, carry the resentment, your body responds as if the threat is happening right now. Your cortisol rises, your blood pressure increases, your immune system is suppressed. Researchers have found that the stress response triggered by unforgiveness mirrors the pattern of chronic stress, which is linked to inflammation, cardiovascular strain, disrupted sleep, and weakened immunity. And here's what the research says about the other side. A systematic review and meta-analysis published in Trauma, Violence, and Abuse found that forgiveness interventions, structured approaches to working through forgiveness, produce significant reductions in depression, anger, and overall distress. The largest global study on forgiveness, conducted across 6 countries using Worthington's Reach Forgiveness Workbook, found that participants who completed the process showed measurable reductions in unforgiveness, depression symptoms, and anxiety symptoms compared to the control group. Forgiveness takes real courage, and the science confirms that this kind of courage pays off. It is one of the most powerful things you can do for your own mental and physical health. So how do you actually start? Because knowing that forgiveness is good for you and knowing what to do with it are two very different things. Let me give you a framework that helps. I want you to picture 3 containers. Each one represents a different destination for the forgiveness process. And this is important. They are not stages. A relationship does not have to move from one bucket to another. Each bucket is a valid, permanent resting place. Bucket 1, what I release to God. This is the internal work. This is where you say, I am choosing to stop carrying the weight of what this person did to me. I am handing the debt to God. This does not require the other person's participation. This does not require their apology. This is between you and God. And I want to say this clearly. Bucket 1 can be the final answer. Some relationships belong here permanently. A person you have released to God does not need to become a person you rebuild with. If you've been feeling an obligation to do something more, to reach out, to reconcile, to make things right, and there is no evidence that the other person has changed, bucket 1 is enough. Releasing is doing something. It is one of the bravest things you can do. Bucket 2, what I repair if it is safe and wise. Some relationships are worth rebuilding when the other person offers a genuine apology, not a deflection, not an excuse, but real ownership of the harm. And when they demonstrate ongoing accountability, honesty, and a mutual willingness to do the work, repair is beautiful. And that is reconciliation. It is a separate step. It is conditional, and it is never required. Bucket 3, what I restrict. This is the boundary. Some people need to be forgiven and kept at a distance. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Guarding your heart after forgiving someone is not bitterness. It is stewardship. You can release someone from the debt they owe you and still choose to limit their access to your life. Now, can a relationship move between buckets over time? Sure. Someone you restricted today might demonstrate real change over the years, and you might choose to repair later. Someone you are repairing with might reveal that restriction is actually the wiser path. The buckets are not locked. The point is, you get to choose where each relationship belongs right now. And no bucket is the wrong answer. Here is your next best step. I want to be clear, this is private. This is between you and God. You are not sending this to anyone. Let one person come to mind, just one, and ask yourself, which bucket does this relationship belong in right now? Then take a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and write one line. I release their name from owing me whatever they took, an apology, the years, the trust. And I do mean write it down. Research on expressive writing shows that putting something into words on paper engages your brain differently than thinking it. Writing externalizes what has been circling inside, and the shift helps your mind begin to process and release. That is bucket one work. And on Good Friday, it is a powerful place to begin. If you sense that a boundary is also needed, you can add a second line. My boundary is, and then whatever you will and will not allow going forward. That is bucket three work, and it can exist alongside the release. That is it. No one sees it. No one needs to approve it. This is your first step on a longer road. 3 things to carry with you from today. Forgiveness is release. It is setting down the weight of what someone did to you. Reconciliation is a separate process that requires safety, honesty, and mutual effort, and it is never an obligation. And the 3 bucket framework gives you permission to release, repair, or restrict. And any one of those can be the final answer. On Wednesday in episode 74, I'm going to take you deeper into the internal work. What to do when you have already forgiven and the replay keeps running. I will walk you through a heart check process and a prayer for willingness that has become one of my favorite tools. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time so that that episode shows up for you automatically. And if your daily reset practice needs a refresh, head over to yournextbeststep.com and pick up your free 5-minute daily reset. It pairs beautifully with this season of release. I will see you on Wednesday for your next best step.